Thank you, Taylor. Again, Phillip Roberts, just another reminder, pesticide credits, 2 hours commercial, 1 hour private, okay? And you can go to the UGA Cotton Team booth and they'll help you out there. I do want to talk a little bit about late season insect pest management strategies, and I will put a plug in. You guys have seen me speak many times, but I show this slide a lot. But we have set the dates for the Scout schools in 2025. You know, the only way we can make good decisions about insect management is to know what's in the field, all right? Use thresholds. Thresholds were designed to maximize profits. But there's the dates for the Scout schools. You would be most interested in the one at Midville. Anthony, that's always, we've kind of fell into, and Peyton, the second Tuesday in June. So if you want to put those on your calendar, we'd love to see you there. I do want to talk a little more about making decisions in terms of managing insects, but you know, every decision you make on the farm, it's all about benefit and cost, right? We want to make investments where our benefits far outweigh the cost. And when we think about insecticides or making a decision about treating insects, you know, it's very easy to calculate the cost. There's a cost of the product, the insecticide itself. There's a cost of making that application. So that's our cost, and that's fairly easy to calculate. And when we think of our benefits, number one, we do not increase yield using insecticides. We protect yield, okay? But our benefit is the yield we protect. But one of the things I want to make sure you understand, because we look at some products like pyrethroids, bifenthrins now, what are they? It's a lot more to apply that product than it is to purchase the product, all right? But when we think about these costs, there are other costs when you make a decision to use an insecticide, especially if we use the wrong insecticide. But there is a cost of reducing beneficial insects and potentially flaring other pests. 2024, we didn't have near as many plant bugs as 2023, but it's very obvious when we're treating plant bugs, we really elevate the risk of spider mites, okay? We know that. But the point I want to make, when we develop thresholds for all these pests, we take all this into consideration. We call them action thresholds. So use these thresholds and let's make good decisions. A couple of comments on cotton aphids. Cotton aphids were slow to develop in 2024. We had some fields with extremely high populations, with honeydew, very heavy. You may have a farm right down the road where you had relatively low aphids. All right, that's what we observed pretty much statewide. Aphids were late. The fungus which killed the aphids were late. All right, it kind of makes sense. I thought every aphid had crashed in the state of Georgia, but not yet. I had a call yesterday afternoon and they were still scratching their heads on aphids. But I think most aphids have crashed. If they haven't, you know, you see these gray fuzzy aphids. Once you see that, those aphids are going to crash really, really quick. Now, one thing I do mention about aphids, you know, we cannot show a yield benefit in our research trials. We can't show a consistent yield benefit. This is some data I pulled from, golly, Camp, what year were you born, sir, Dr. Hand? Okay, so you were born. But back from 1998 to 2008, the difference where we treated aphids versus untreated was 5 pounds. And statistically, that's not a difference, but 5 pounds. But in the last couple years, 2019 to 22, we did a lot more work. Again, we didn't see a consistent response. Those yields are basically the same, and that's a lot of trials. The main thing that jumped out of me is, you know, whether it's genetics, management, you guys, we make better cotton today than we did 15 years ago. Everybody would agree with that. But we still can't see this consistent response to treating aphids. That's 27 trials, and we had 17 trials in this data set. That's a lot of data. But with that said, there are also fields that I know, Bill, that would benefit from treating aphids. It's not against the law to spray aphids. I mean, some of these fields that were just covered in aphids, and you've seen hot spots in small areas of field, we don't want the whole field to look like that. Sometimes we have to intervene. As I talk to agents and consultants this year, this June cotton, you know, you get little 3 or 4 leaf cotton that's just smoking covered with aphids. We don't want to slow that maturity down. That could catch us on the back end. So, you know, we probably treated a few more aphids this year than normal, and maybe we helped ourselves in some situations. Again, it becomes a judgment call. But I want to spend most of my time talking about bowl feeding bugs. Bowl feeding bugs. And when we think about bowl feeding bugs in the state of Georgia, we primarily talk about stink bugs, right? Southern green stink bug. We can also have a green stink bug, brown stink bugs. Also, we have clouded plant bugs. This is a clouded plant bug nymph. Here's a tarnished plant bug nymph. Here's a leaf-footed bug. The fact of the matter is, any of these bugs on this picture can feed on a developing bowl. The majority time in the state of Georgia, it is stink bugs, okay? But there are other species that'll do the same thing. And when we crack bowls looking for feeding injury, I can't tell you if a stink bug did it or a clouded plant bug did it, okay? But a damaged bowl is a damaged bowl, and we make decisions based on the level of damage. Stink bugs have sucking mouth parts. And this is a review for a lot of you, but I thought, hey, I hadn't talked about stuff like this in a while. But they have sucking mouth parts. Stink bugs are looking to feed on the developing seed. It doesn't matter what crop they feed on, whether it's soybeans, I said that word, corn, another one. But they're feeding on developing seed. In a cotton bowl, when they feed on that seed, they find the seed, they will inject some enzymes into that cotton seed to dissolve those plant tissues, and then they drink or suck out the contents. Now, the way stink bugs actually damage the bowl, if they physically injure the seed, like a mechanical injury to the seed, lint is just part of the seed, so you could have an impact on lint development. But when we really get hurt is when that stink bug feeds, he may inject or introduce a pathogen into the bowl. And everyone in this room has seen knotty cotton in the top that sometimes rots. Sometimes we'll rot a single lock, sometimes we rot the whole bowl. But when we get hurt with yield, it's from the pathogens that they're inserting into that bowl. Stink bugs are not a pest of pre-bloom cotton, all right? Not a pest of pre-bloom cotton. Stink bugs are a pest once cotton begins to bloom. A bowl is susceptible to stink bug feeding until it is 25 days of age. We could talk about heat units, but to keep stuff simple, I'm going to use days. A bowl is susceptible till it's 25 days of age. Classic feeding injury by a stink bug. You see these little prick marks on the inner surface of the bowl wall. You'll see these callus growths on the inner surface of the bowl wall. You'll see stained lint. We've got to look inside the bowl to know for sure if we have feeding injury by a bowl feeding bug. We can sometimes see lesions on the outside of the bowl. They may or may not penetrate the bowl. We can have damage on the inside of the bowl, but no visible damage on the outside of the bowl. As the hand we're dealt, we've got to look inside the bowls to know if we have a problem. Stink bugs prefer to feed on bowls that are about the diameter of a quarter. That bowl somewhere between 10 and 12 days of age. So that's the bowl we're going to scout, okay? Feed on the diameter of a quarter. so important you select the correct size bowl to look for injury. If you select a bowl that's too large, let's say it's 20 days of age, number one, it's almost impossible to bust it open and look inside. Number two, that's injury that occurred 8 or 10 days ago. Yes, we're concerned about what happened 8 or 10 days ago, but we want to make decisions on what's in the field right now. So you've got to get these quarter-size bowls. This is just a close-up of some more of the internal injury. We're looking at that inner wall of the bowl. A bowl which has not been fed upon is just nice, creamy, white, and smooth. It's very simple to check for feeding injury from these bowl-feeding bugs, okay? Very simple. Here's just a picture of some of the damage you'll see. You know, maybe we had a little bit of pathogen there. That lock will probably still be grabbed by the spindles. We can have some color problems with a lot of stink bug damage, and we get a lot of rots. But again, when we really get hurt is when we get these bowl rots where we lose the entire bowl. And you know, we hadn't done a lot of stink bug work now in about 10 or 15 years, but one of the things that I was always intrigued by is this concept of what I called clean bugs and dirty bugs. And it varied. We did all these different trials and we examined what percentage of the stink bugs were dirty or had pathogens in their guts. Fascinating. If you've got dirty bugs, we've got problems, but we have no idea to know. So all our work is just based on field studies, and we have very good defensible data for our thresholds. Here's just an interesting fact, and I call it a myth. So I told you stink bugs or bowls are susceptible to yield loss from stink bugs until they're about 25 days of age. Well, the myth I wanted to tell you about is a bowl becomes too hard for a stink bug to feed on. Well, that's a myth. Stink bugs can still feed on bowls right up until they open. But in terms of yield loss, it does not happen after 25 days. Okay? Stink bugs can damage mature pecans. That's pretty hard. That's a lot harder than a cotton boll. And if you don't believe me, get you a jar, put you some pecans in it, put you a few stink bugs in there, and then I'd challenge you to eat those pecans and see what they taste like. I would also challenge you when you crack those pecans, there's going to be little black areas on the nut itself, but they can actually go through a pecan shell. So the bowl can still be fed on, but it just doesn't matter in terms of yield. And that's an important point. Other point I wanted to make, and again, it's been a while, a lot of knotty cotton there, a lot of that goes into the picker. So I want you to think about stink bug feeding again. I want to re-emphasize to you where stink bugs prefer to feed are bowls that are approximately 10 days of age. Now this slide's a little confusing, maybe it's more than you want to know, but I will explain it to you. This yellow line shows bowl age here on the horizontal axis, but that shows the length of fibers. Am I right, Dr. Snyder? Fibers elongate for about the first 3 weeks of a bowl's life. Is that correct? Stink bugs prefer to feed on bowls 10 or 12 days of age. Some of you guys remember 20 years ago or 25 years ago, we had some pretty serious quality issues, Mr. Tyson. We did a lot of work looking at quality. I know more than I wanted to know about quality, but it just makes sense that potentially stink bugs could impact quality, like fiber length, because they're feeding when a lot of these fibers are elongating. Now this blue line is thickening of the fibers. That's when we're adding weight, micronair. But the point I want to make to you, and we did a lot of work, and a lot of work for just one slide, excessive stink bug damage can damage about every parameter of fiber quality we got, whether it's color, uniformity, or length. Those are some big ones. But at the end of the day, if we manage stink bugs for maximum yield using thresholds, we preserve fiber quality. So you guys that don't do anything, we got to protect this cotton, not only for yield, but also for quality. We do have something we call a dynamic threshold. It's simple math, really. So when we're looking at the number of susceptible bolls on a cotton plant, and a susceptible boll would be something between 10 and 25 days of age. Y'all with me? That's when they prefer to feed, about 10 days. Once we get to 25 days, it's safe from attack in terms of yield. If you just think about a cotton plant, what time during the growth of that cotton plant do you have the most bolls in that category? It's basically the 3rd through the 5th week of bloom. And if we're scouting stink bugs using a percent injury to trigger an insecticide application, if you have 20% and there's only 2 bolls on the plant, that's a lot different than if you have 20% weight and there's 10 bolls on the plant susceptible. But the bottom line is that 3rd, 4th, and 5th week of bloom is a critical time to be on your stink bug management, all right? We want you to scout. We want you to use this dynamic threshold. When we get later in the year, 7th, 8th week of bloom, we can raise that threshold. There's not many bolls to protect. Are you going to wait on them and pick them? Easy to scout for. I'd encourage you to do it. A lot of you are just going to spray stink bugs. Had a conversation with a grower last week about putting on a calendar spray for stink bugs. I understand a lot of people do that, but better than a calendar spray, if you just need to do something, target the development of the plant. That 3rd week of bloom, that 5th week of bloom, that's when it's important. Insecticides for stink bugs, you guys know this. Southern green stink bug, pyrethroids are very good. Organophosphates, Bidrin, Orthene, very good. If you're dealing with brown stink bugs, and sometimes we do, pyrethroids are fair. You need to use the highest labeled rates. Bifenthrin tends to be better than other pyrethroids on brown stink bug. Most pyrethroids are about 50% on browns. Bifenthrin's about 70%. So if you're dealing with browns, bifenthrin makes sense. If you've got bad problems with browns, you're going to need organophosphate. Most years, we're good right here, just using a pyrethroid. When you're making decisions on stink bugs, a big thing is how does it affect other things in the field? We've probably got more mites scattered around Georgia this year than we've had in a long time. Probably has a lot to do with that terrible hot, dry June, right? There are people spraying mites all in various spots across Georgia this week. If you've got mites, there's an organophosphate called orthene or acephate. Don't want to put that out there. That'll really flare up mites. Aphids are probably gone, but if you have whiteflies, golly, there's certain products we want to avoid if we have whiteflies, like a dicrotophos or Bidrin, just because they tend to make those problems worse. I just thought this was a cool picture when I was getting some of these old slides. This is a trial in 2005, but I wanted to illustrate a point. These are actually some large plots. I think there were 24 rows by 200 feet. This is a cotton field that bordered peanuts. I'm just going to put the yields, and the point I want to make, we always tend to see a lot higher stink bugs right on the edge of peanuts. Make sure you got some damage before you just pull the trigger for no reason. I understand you're going to spray, but this data clearly illustrates, if you look at our untreated plots next to peanuts, that's 200 pounds. We got 200 feet away, it was 500 pounds. Where's the other untreated? I guess it's these two right here. But the farther we got away from the peanuts. So it's just a good place to spot check some fields that are bordering peanuts. That's the only point I wanted to make. If you have mites, abamectin, tough call. 50% of the plants have some type of injury, and I don't mean turning red, being eaten up by mites. I mean just a little bit of tinging on the leaves. A couple quick comments about whiteflies. I think I'm over my time. We looked really good with whiteflies coming into this planting season. I mean, we had a below average winter in terms of what I would call whitefly growing degree days. One of the things we do have now is a website for you people in whitefly country where you can look at our sticky card counts. I just sent this out last week, Jordan, but what I want to show you where we were last week, our counts were just like 2022. So folks, Scott, just like 2022. Macy, 2022, you had whiteflies in Turner County. In 2022, you weren't there, but this is a resource you can use. We looked so good, but that hot, dry June just let whiteflies get going, Mark. I mean, we're seeing low numbers scattered around a larger than normal geographic area. Numbers are still low. We need to pray for rainfall. That's going to help keep these whiteflies from being problems for us. I mean, that's the main thing that's going to dictate what happens with whiteflies. If we can maintain some decent rainfall, I mean, we're going to have to spray some whiteflies, I can assure you, in our historical whitefly area. But we need good rainfall to keep this thing from spreading out. All right, with that, just one final slide on terminating. The main thing you needed to know was stink bugs, 25 days. Camp told you that, you know, you're going to have to make a decision on that last bloom. It's somewhere between September 1st and 15th. You had 25 days to it. On some of your later cotton, we may push whitefly sprays into the 1st of October. All right, just be prepared to do that if you have a problem. With that, I'll stop. If there are any quick questions, I'll address them.